Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us today. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning, Vincent. It's not how you do it, the wind-up.
Yeah, just a quick announcement. I mentioned...
Oh, it's off. All three.
That was great. That was really well done. So, Rick, Mike Rivero and USA Prepares are both on the Ron Gibson channel, and there was some questions as to what happened to Mike Rivero. He was off the air for a couple days, and there was some concern. And I mentioned yesterday that I called Republic Broadcasting to see if I could get some information to share with our class, because some of our class was wondering, what happened. And they posted that on the Ron Gibson channel on the internet, on YouTube. And so Ron Gibson sent me an email, and the answer is that Mike Rivero is in the process of getting ready to move back to the mainland. He's in Hawaii, and he's moving back to the mainland, so he would miss a few shows. So it's as simple as that. So everything's fine with Mike Rivero, no worries, and I just wanted to let you all
we still do have a chance of meatballs. What I'm trying to say is, I tried to, last week alone, I did 2 different radio where they were halfway into the show before they realized they were not broadcasting.
Really?
Really.
Yeah.
That happened to me, literally. And so, it's like when, and this just happened, the, Fox News. Yes, Fox News came out and said the Navy is now admitting UFOs. Now, what does that mean? Well, it probably means that now they can prove that the craft that everybody's been seeing for the last century is Boeing. Plausible deniability. I am watching how the news spins on everything, and I'm starting to get the big picture. And it is so controlled and so subtly controlled that I just can't believe it. I cannot believe it. Now, are UFO real? Yes, they are. They're there on a cave wall. There they are, and I just saw something, and blah, blah, blah. But do you think that anybody's going to admit it unless they can point to, oh, yeah, we have that now? That's how it's going.
Rick, I've been threatened in my life, and several years ago I was threatened by a politician, a high-ranking politician in the corrupt state of Missouri. And this guy said that if I didn't shut down USA Prepares, he would, and stop broadcasting, and stop doing all the things that I do, relating to USA Prepares, he was going to contact the media, which he was used to doing because, politicians call the media and they come and run with their microphones and their cameras and they put these guys on TV as if it's, something we should pay attention to because they're politicians and they're in the government corporation. Well, he threatened that if I didn't shut down, he was going to expose me as someone who believes in UFOs and aliens. And I said, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Because, frankly, UFO means unidentified flying objects. So, maybe someone has identified them, but I certainly haven't.
Well, when they do, it's like when they move in such a manner that a human couldn't exist in it because of the G-force.
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I've read reports. Do I believe in them? I don't know what they are. I don't know what they are. And one of my instructors was the late, great Carl Sagan. And he said in class, that, now I'm paraphrasing, that we would be quite arrogant to think that we were the biggest, best, and smartest and only ones around.
Just even on this planet, there are mammals that can do things we can't.
Yeah.
Technically, by the way, I might add, I forgot, scientifically, like a dolphin, using sonar to create cold fusion as a toy that they play with. Now, it's arrogant on that part, but there's something more going on here. And when I say that, never mind. I don't want to get started because I am a person of interest now. I'm getting so many different synchronistic events going on around me that I know it's not arbitrary anymore. I know that something else is going on. What it is, I don't know. And that, unfortunately, also leads to paranoia. And paranoia is a tool that is used now out of Tavistock. So with that said, what do you do with these things? Well, I try to laugh. That's all. That's exactly the only thing I can do.
All right, let's talk about paranoia.
If I start taking any of this stuff seriously, I'd be in a mental institution. Oh, wait, I am. That's all.
We all are.
Well, wait. I mean, the whole thing's nuts. And when I say that, it's getting weirder by the day. And I can point to examples.
Go ahead. Let's hear some.
Oh, you really want to go there, Vincent?
Well, yeah, I've got a comment, so I'm ready. Let's go there. I've got an example.
Okay. Bring
all right, well,
I dare you.
All right, let's start with me. You mentioned paranoia. Well, I was talking with Jason just as the broadcast was starting. He's our engineer today. And I said, Jason, in general terms, how long do you expect an electronic device to last? Whether it be a phone or a DVD player or something like that. How long what is your expectation as a young person? And he said 5 to 6 years. Now, I think that's accurate.
I think it is, too. I agree with him. Yeah.
Okay, I agree. And he's a really bright guy. Well, just before the broadcast started, I'm in the studio here at our farmhouse, and our son, and you met him, bought me something really cool. He likes interesting, odd, unusual things. So he was at a store where somebody brought in to sell for money an award, something that was given to someone who did a great thing. And that thing was, this guy was probably the top salesman of the quarter of a year for Rambler, the old American Motors Company. Now, it's dated 1961 on the plaque. And this particular award is a temperature gauge, a humidity gauge, and a barometer, all with dials, framed, really nice looking, walnut-stained framed device. It was probably very expensive in its day. And it's dated that it was presented in 1961. So it might have been made in 1961 or 1960. Well, it still works. And I use it every day. And that thing that has been recording and displaying with dials the temperature, the humidity, and the barometric pressure has been working for 58 years. Now, do I expect it to last another 5 or 6? Of course. I expect it to last another 58 years at least, unless somebody drops it and breaks it.
Hammer was a hammer, the old hammer. I've got my dad's hammer.
Yeah. And so do I. I have an Estwing hammer, Estwing. I think it's the finest hammer ever made. I bought it in the 1970s as my first hammer. It's got a blue rubberized hand grip. It is steel from the tip to the tip to the tip. It is impressive. I paid $18 for it back then. I use it every day, and it's just as good now as it was when I bought it because I take care of it. I don't leave it out in the yard and in the rain and the back of the truck. I take care of my tools. So it will go for another, 100, 200 years. Easily if it's taken care of and not abused. Well, so what I'm saying is when you talk about being paranoid, one of the things that I see is that expectations are changing because the quality of things has changed. Right? Do people believe if they buy a hammer today that it's going to last a lifetime or 2 or 3 or 4? I don't think so. And that's a hammer. I think our expectations have changed because the quality has gotten so bad on so many things, and we have a right to be paranoid. This system is closing in on us. Now, I've got other examples, like the ladies who deliver the mail. There's several ladies who deliver the mail here at the farm. They drive Jeeps, relatively new Jeeps. They all have valve taps, tap, 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 coming from the engine. They all have the same problem. How is it possible that these gals have Jeeps and they regularly service them and they have engine failures, major engine failures? How is it possible? With like just over 100,000 miles, they have these problems. We didn't used to have these problems. I have a Jeep, a 1994 Jeep, made by Chrysler. Had to put a camshaft in it. Why? Because it had valve tap. Why? Because the engine oil, the additives in the engine oil of modern engine oil, lubrication oil, has been degraded. But we've been told that it's been upgraded, but it's been downgraded. So we're having engine failures. So when you talk about paranoia, it's real. It's not imaginary. That's just 2 examples.
Paranoia that I experience is not knowing if it's this or it's that. If it's this, that doesn't matter. If it's that, it matters a lot. You don't know, and if it's done correctly, you will never know, and it will constantly kick at you of wanting to know. You want to have closures. It's like a windmill and Don Quixote. And so it's a thing that came out of Tavistock, the concept of paranoia and gang stalking. For example, they've discovered that if you take a criminal and you put him in prison for 10 years, the likely is he's going to come back out and be a criminal again. However, if you do it this way and you don't put him in jail, you do something he can't figure out, he'll take himself off the street or go into self-destruct, something like Frazier does when he meets new women. Now, I'll tell you something. This concept came out of Kirkland, Washington, to actually address the serious problem of our prison system and the fact that it's over. We have a commercial coming up.
Yeah, we do. Tell us more about it.
I thought I heard music and
Yeah. Let's talk more about it when we come back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. RichardAllenMiller.com. RichardAlan Miller.com. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Rick, you were talking about prisoners. You were talking about if you change the conditions, they may take themselves off the street.
Yes. Okay, let's pick it up. So, gang stalking came out of mind control studies that occurred at Tavistock. Tavistock, England, was where it all began in terms of trying to understand human behavior and how to alter it. And it was part of, it started with things like NLP, neurolinguistics, because when we talk, a lot of us do a lot of other things while we're talking. I'm animated. I move my hands, my facial expressions. I'm probably emitting gases, not fart, but, gases. And all of this is part of communication. And so once you and subtle, you're not aware. But like an Italian, and you should know it, talk a lot with their hands. Now, I'm not talking about the fingers part either. They gesture a lot. That is a form of expression. And once you understand the meat and potato part of that, you then can go in and use it to manipulate. For example, if I say something and your eyes go up to looking upward, that means something quite different than what's going downward. And you're not aware of it, but I can tell when you're lying just by your body movement. Now, if that's true, then what they did, they went to the second generation of information on that in terms of how to subtly poke you here and poke you there, because you're not aware of it, but you're taking that information in. And what it would do is say, we know what you're doing, we're going to watch you do it, and then what we're going to do is da-da-da-da-da. And when you do it that way, then we start to play on your primary fears. And profiling is when you find out how you attached your original wounds. And when you were born, things that you don't remember that affect and cause the behavior that you currently do. Why you're lie by omission, da-da-da-da-da-da, steal, whatever. Once you have that profile, then we do A and 2 B's and 1 C. And then that is a target for you in terms of putting you in a place of questioning. And it's a little different for each of us because we're wounded differently. And because of that, we have different type styles. And once you type style, he's a thinking intuitive, that then becomes the model used for the profiling in terms of how we deliver different stimuli to you. Like, let's flood Vincent's phone with 20 random da-da-da-da-das. Now imagine what happens next when you add algorithms and give it to an AI. Now we're getting into the bigger picture. And what's happening now is with the cameras and pattern recognition of facial expressions, we can arbitrarily take anyone on the street, immediately profile him into categories, and play. And they did that as a protocol in Kirkland, Washington, to see if they could take drug dealers off the streets of New York City. And guess what? It worked better than prison did. Going in and arresting them, the crime rates dropped 10 times more than just going in with the thugs and arresting people and shooting them. How does that work? So now what happens next is a couple of corporates take that protocol and add it to their database of sales. And in fact, the Kirkland, Washington absorption was taken over by Amazon. Amazon is the least of it. I'm not even concerned about Amazon anymore. I now know who the real culprit was. It was Ingram. Now, with that said, I have a lawyer that flew all the way in from Atlanta. We're going to do your thing on pro bono. And this guy was really good. Spent several nights here, took him to dinner, spent time in my home, all that. Come to find out, he had been disbarred 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought, Rick. We're going into a break. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Rick, you were talking about a lawyer. I believe that you were implying that the lawyer lied and was disbarred.
Yes, he broke federal law. Yes. Worse. It gets much worse. Guess what? It goes downhill from there, because once we discovered that he was a shill, we have not yet communicated that to him. And yesterday, Julie receives an email from him saying, we would like you to sign this limited power of attorney so I can get started. Now.
We're talking about fraud now.
Oh, yeah. Go figure. I have had 6 different events with lawyers trying to go after Amazon. And every single one of them has been a false lead. Now, was that coincidental or was that intentional? And the correct answer is yes. Why? Because gang stalking is now a protocol added to Amazon, and they are using AIs, just like Google. Now, let's go explore this further and how that's going to affect every single one of you listening to me right now. I'm a beta test, and I am out there trying to do the good fight. But guess what? I can't get my engine to start because before I even put the key in, they changed the lock. They have anticipated me in every single thing because I'm profiled. Now, imagine a plane, an aircraft flying over. There, you can see this on Dead, deploying 10,000 flies on the wall, each one with your name on it. How did that go in the movie Wanted? Oh, and your name came up, and your name came up, and oh yes, Vincent, your name came up, and it goes downhill from there. And when I tell you this, yesterday alone, with me monitoring my expenses down to the penny, I had $4 in my checking account. They're taking me out this way, there's other people that way. It's all done to pressure. And they can't individually take you out doing this or that. So that's what's called gang stalking. That means there's more than one thing happening at the same time. That's why they call it gang stalking. Not because there's a gang doing it, because they whittle you away in pieces like the ocean does the sands on a beach. Now, this is the new protocols in mind control. Last year, it was about the food you eat and the obesity of what's happening in America. And I want you to understand that it's very clear to me now because I'm pretty smart and I try to stay current, and because it's happening to me, I'm getting the nooks and crannies. Now, there's something wonderful that's coming out of this also for me. What it is I am now hearing bagpipes in my mind's eye at all times of the day. And that's described in the appendices, which means I'm rising above it somehow. That even penniless, they can't take me out because I'm my own unit. And by the way, that's the good news for all of you, is that what made you God's favored is you have choice. And the bottom line is you need to learn how to hear yourself to the level of white noise that you're currently all enjoying. And that's what it is. It's white noise, like subtlety on the distinction between laser-main stage magic, where I'm now going to make you walk like a duck, and real magic, where you choose to do what you want to do. And I'm on that threshold. And here's the bottom line: it's not a goal. It is a process. And once you learn how to talk to yourself, that's where you're going to find all the answers. Now, on the UFO, everybody said it's the military. It isn't the military that doesn't want to hear you. It's religion. What do you think that's going to do if it all of a sudden discovered earthwide that aliens exist and there's advanced technologies? How's that going to affect, well, I don't know, Christianity and the Church of Rome? I think it's time we all realize that there's something more going on here. It's not about aliens and UFO and da-da-da-da-da. There's agendas that are more subtle, and they hold their right hand up, and you're watching your right hand while Harry is in your pocket.
Rick, you're talking about a lot of things happening all at once, and just one of them.
That's the gang stalking concept.
Yeah.
That's why they call it gang.
Well, it's working. It's working really well. And let me just give you an example of one that's been happening to me lately.
Really well.
You talk.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
It's got everybody.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about a flood of phone calls. Well, we've been getting some here at the farm, and it starts out with, I don't know who calls, so sometimes I answer the phone. I can't tell by caller ID. And it's, it's ridiculous that we have to have caller ID now, because we didn't used to have that. Back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even before, you just answered the phone. It was normal to answer the phone, and everything was above board. Not anymore. So guy keeps calling our house. Actually, it's a corporation. And the call starts out, I say, hello. Or I may say, yeah. Because if I don't know who it is, I'm not going to try to indicate who I am. I'm not going to say, hi, thank you for calling, or this is Vincent Finelli. I might just say something like Pizza Hut or towing service or something like that, or yo. But it's not, I don't answer normally when, I don't answer in my normal way when I don't know who's calling. Okay? So I see a conditioning happening, and this particular corporation will say this call may be recorded for quality assurance. And then the guy will say, Vincent, the guy will say, Vincent, and I'll say, I don't agree to you recording this. And he says, well, that's up to you. And I go, okay, goodbye. And that's how I handle it. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to tell us this is normal. Yeah, this is just the way we do things. We always record calls. Why? Why do they record calls?
Yeah.
I don't agree.
Well, see, that's where the paranoia. You don't know that what they're doing is slipping information to you where you can't ever really know why. Doesn't matter what it is, but the very fact is like curiosity killed the cat. It causes you.
Well, here's how I look at it. Here's how I look at it. When they call me and they say this is being recorded for quality assurance, my reaction is, okay, so you guys are such a bunch of dummies that you don't know what you're doing and you can't figure out who's messing up or who's screwing up, so you got to record it to figure it out. Well, don't call me. If you don't have your ship in order, don't, and that's SHIP, don't call me. Don't call me.
So what happened yesterday to Julie was we were up on in the hills doing a walk, having nature and getting away from everything, and she receives a phone call. She says, I kept my phone on because I had a mammogram and it might be my doctor calling me with some bad news. So she takes the call, and it's Social Security saying that her Social Security number has been compromised and that her annuity thing is da-da-da-da-da. It ruined the hike. It turns out it was a shill call. There's no recourse, and they just put a spike of many, many, many spikes yesterday into my life. And when you start to realize that the synchronicity of it, that's where your future timeline is talking to your present moment and saying, this is significant, this is not natural, and something else is going on. Once you have that dialogue, that's where the magic begins, of where you can step outside of everything and take control back into your life again. I'm penniless, and thank you. That's why he gives you, the audience, why he gives you my website, because that's my only source of income, and they are taking me out financially. How they're taking Vincent out is farm. How they're going to take you out, stay tuned, film at 11. But it is a takeout process because China now owns 50% of Grants Pass, Oregon.
Yeah, when you talk about...
Oh, no, man. I can see clearly. I can see clearly the hills now. And I'm seeing things through the cloud as the cloud is breaking open and breaking open. It's a process like in hypnosis. And the cloud's clearing, and you're starting to see more clearly what's going on. You'll never quite say it because, of course, they're using chemtrails. but it's there, and you can see through it. What is chemtrails? Yeah, see, you don't know, do you? You have some ideas, but you really don't know. And nobody's come forward to say so. Why? 5G. I can list them. It's a process, and it came out of Tavistock, and it's being run full Monty. And now the bad news is it's being run by aliens, AIs. AI is silicon-based life form, and they're different than us, and there are things they can't do, we can, one of which is choice. And once you get that protocol understanding and why you were God's favored, that's your clear bell for Savior. That's where you're going to find Jesus Christ, right there. Your inside intuition is that's the higher part of self that in the Kabbalah equates with Christ-like consciousness. It's only halfway to God, and it's called Kether and Tippereth. Tippereth is where you become master of your own ship. And okay, in Masonry, it would be grade 7 or above, master of the temple. Well, that's only halfway to having union. And I'm in this process now of understanding a metaphor. And it's, I am ready to ramp up. I have articles going into Time Magazine and Scientific American and, oh yes, Cosmo. I'm going to go back with a double-barrel shotgun and see how they like that one.
All right, we'll be right back. Dr. Richard Alan Miller's with us, RichardAlanMiller.com. Hey, Rick, I got a call from... I'll see that when I believe it, right?
That's the way it works too, man.
Yeah. So, Rick, I got a call from John Stadtmiller last night. In class, John Stadtmiller owns Republic Broadcasting Network.
I like him, by the way. I like him,
yeah. I remember when he was going to bed early. You and I and a bunch of others were here at the farm, and he said, "I'm going to bed," and he started walking up the stairs, and you said, "Wait for me, I'll be right up," something like that.
Yeah, that's a Fraser situational concept that we could use as a, he went to a gay bar on the one I watched last night. That was funny. It was in Seattle, and it was the Bombay Bicycle Factory for those of you that watch Fraser and want to know what the real club was.
So John Stadtmiller called me last night, and in the background, Brett, really close to his phone, I could hear his cat meowing, not just once. This cat was having a conversation with John while John was talking to me. And the cat, in my understanding, now I couldn't see the other side of the call, but I could hear this cat wanting John's attention. And the reason I'm mentioning that, it wasn't just one meow. It was a dialogue that this cat was having with John.
Mean cat, yeah.
All right, so here's the point. I have noticed that our animals, and I'm talking about if I walk down the driveway and check the fields with Mrs. Finelli, the dogs will come. 3 dogs will follow us, TJ and the other 2, and then the cats will follow us. And then the chickens will come out there too. So something is going on, Rick, that is causing animals...
There is a science fiction story by Simak that called City. And remember the expression, it's the thing is going to the dogs. Well, this is in the future when man has become so paranoid, he lives in a closed cycle, and they've given the universe back to the dogs to manage. And it's called City by Simic, and it's something that I read when I was 12 years old. And I remember it because it's happening now just like George Orwell. Read it and weep. These were visionaries that saw how it could play, and if it could, it would. That's Hollywood. She would, if she could. And let me tell you, the holly is the stick you make the wand with. Hollywood. And there it is. If you see it, you'll believe it. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't believed it.
Yeah.
And that's where the magic begins, is in the mind's eye.
So, Rick, what I'm saying is
get that part. That's why hypnosis, for example, is an extremely powerful tool. Extremely powerful. Why would religions not have it, and yet they go into trance states, falling down on the floor in Enochian, angelic language of John D. Tongues. I am understanding the bigger picture, and let me tell you, as it gets meaner out there, I am personally evolving to meet it. I'm a lead scout. I'm not any great thing, because what I can do is not from me, and I can say something else. Nothing is original. It's a group think. And while one of us gets there sooner than the other, it isn't because he's better. We're all bring tools to the table. Our wounds, the wounds turn out to be assets. That's what makes me different than Vincent. Stuff, how we were beat up differently by our parents.
Rick, you mentioned religion, and I was thinking about sharing some of the things that I've been writing as sections of my book.
You're writing a book, are you?
Yeah, I am.
Cool. I can't imagine
the book,
what it would be like. No whining. That'll be the title.
Well, okay. So the book is really a bunch of paragraphs on different topics, short answers about the way I do things. Okay. For example.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you say Will Rogers?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sort of. Yes. And let me just give you two quick examples. And one, because you mentioned religion. So I pulled out my notes from my book, and they're cryptic. But, you know, when it comes to propane, you buy your own propane tank rather than, call a propane company and say, hey, can you bring a tank and can you bring some propane? And then they fill it whenever they feel like it, or they fill it at their price. So you buy your own propane tank, and you own it, and then you can shop anywhere you want and buy propane at the lowest price of whenever you buy it. And there's certain times when propane is the least expensive, and that's toward the warmest part of the summer. Nobody's thinking about heating in the hottest part of the summer, so propane prices might be down a third or so. And that's when I buy, and I buy in bulk, and I might buy, every 4, 5, 8 years. So that's one of the topics in the book. I'll tell you about the next one, which is extremely controversial, a great way to save money. Everyone all set? Hour number 2 of the USA Prepares. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, richardallenmiller.com. Rick, I mentioned that in my book I've got lots of topics. It's the way I live my life. And actually the way our family does, things that we do that are different. And I think that they're great tips for those who want to prepare, those who want to ensure more of their own security, those who want to live more frugally, those who want to do things better, faster, and smarter. Not always faster, but sometimes faster. And so there's one area in the finance category of this book. I talk about finance and economics. I talk about health. I talk about mechanics and all kinds of things. Well, one topic is how to save money, or one area. And I have a way that is extremely controversial, and will probably lose both of our listeners when I say what what I'm about to say. All right, so you can save easily 10%. Easily 10% very quickly. You don't have to do anything. Literally, this is one way of saving money, and you just do nothing, and you'll save 10%. And so what is that? Well, you stop going to church. Literally. If you stop going to an organized church, you won't be donating to the church. And churches seem to expect 10% of your gross income.
Tithing.
Tithing, especially the big churches. And if you stop going to that organized church, you won't be contributing. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't help people. I'm not saying that at all. Because what we do is if someone's in need, we will help those people directly, where 100% of what we think is going to that person or that family actually gets there. Okay? So, for example, if there's a family that's hungry, we don't give them money. We'll go and buy them food, and we'll bring boxes of food and just drop it off. We won't say anything. They'll just show up. So that's just one way, one very simple way.
George Carlin did it best when he said, God has everything, but he needs more money.
Yeah.
It's not God. It's organized religion, and basically there's nothing wrong with that. Supporting belief systems that you want to invest in. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that part.
No, I don't have any issue with that at all. However, I do have an issue with these praise the Lord Bible thumping preacher types who have 3 private jets, because one's not enough.
Comes to mind, that movie, Elmer Gantry, and watch what happened to who was the woman that later after the husband went to jail. Oh, I guess I can't remember. Tammy something or other. I forget. Tammy Baker.
Tammy Faye Baker.
There's Exhibit A.
Okay, we had Exhibit A at the Get Prepared Expo. I don't know if you were there, but Jim Baker, the convicted felon guy in Missouri, married to Tammy Faye Baker, that guy, the television evangelist, he came to the Get Prepared Expo, and I spent a little bit of time with him, and I was wondering, what is this guy doing at our Get Prepared Expo? Why did he buy 25 tickets for his entourage to come to the Get Prepared Expo? What was this all about? Well, I didn't learn till after what it was about. Well, here's what it was about. He zeroed in on the preparedness mindset, the preparedness movement, if you will, so that he could line up products that he could sell for profit on his television Praise the Lord show. And that's what he did. So these mega churches, there's a church it's near Springfield, Missouri. It's called the James River Assembly of God. It is huge. I went in there one day to talk about the Get Prepared Expo, and I went in the wrong door. Well, I found the right door. It was a quarter of a mile away in the same building. It's huge. There are 3,500 seats in what they call the sanctuary. It's a theater. It's huge. It blows away the Moon River Theater in Branson. It blows it away. This is huge. But anyway, so why do these preachers have to have, 3 jets? I guess it brings them closer to God by about 30,000 feet closer. That's what this is all about. And one of them was, I'm paraphrasing, was saying that God wants us to have more money, more stuff, more things. Really? I don't remember it that way. I thought God wanted us to be good, honest people. That's what I thought, with morals. That was my take on it, but what do I know? Rick, I mentioned animals, and during the top of the hour break, I went into the kitchen, got some coffee, and Mrs. Finelli was at the kitchen table, and we just adopted a cat a while ago, and he was a tiny, tiny, tiny kitten. And so one of our boys named him Little B-I-T. Well, since then, we've renamed him Fungus, and we think that's that's more appropriate. So Mrs. Finelli was at the kitchen table with Fungus, and she said, he's afraid. He's hanging on. He's clinging. He's got his claws, dug into her top, and because he doesn't want to let go. And that's what I was saying about the animals following us. I believe they sense something. Now, it's not like we beat our animals. It's not like we yell at our animals. It's not like they should be afraid of us. They're not afraid of us, but they're afraid in general. That's my take. And when I was talking about John Stadtmiller, his cat wanted his undivided attention and kept meowing, 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 meowing.
And there's an explanation to some of this. Julie has a brand new Honda, and when we drive from here to there, her direction meter on her car goes crazy. It goes out of whack and has to be reset. What would do that? 5G. And you can now use brand new cars, and their electronics are affected by 5G. And if you don't think that's affecting the bees and their directional senses and the animals, just right out of the gate, there's a bandwidth frequencies that are affecting the animals, and they know it and can't communicate it. And bees, there's a brand new study on why bees are dying. It's because they use those bandwidths for navigation, and it's screwing them up. Where's that study?
We are taking down the American farmer at record rates. We have a bee colony across the road from us, and it was doing okay, and it's dead now. And we don't see very many bees here at our farm. We don't see many birds here at our farm. We see lots of birds. Well, the birds eat the insects, and if there are no insects, there are going to be no birds. And we're seeing very few birds because we're seeing very few insects. Where did they go? Where did they go?
Now, that's a different thing that's happening. Basically, the first to notice changes in our environment will be the farmer. And there's articles now showing that Missouri farmers like you are noticing less flies on the cow pies and the ants. And that's because the sun's UV rays, the CB rays, are reaching the surface of the earth, which is affecting the insects with no protection, and it's our food chain moving upward that will affect man shortly. And that's because our atmosphere is not screening certain bandwidths that it used to. Why is that?
All right, let's talk about that for a minute. I have some scientific proof of what you're saying is correct. Normally, it takes 3 or 4 days to bale hay. And let me just describe the process so that I'll bring the class up to speed quickly. So the way it works is we grow grass, and we cut the grass, and we have a special mower called a hay mower. And this thing has very short blades. They're about 3 inches long, and they spin around 20,000 RPM, way faster than a rotary walk-behind mower or way faster than a riding mower. And the mower is designed to cut the grass at about 2 inches from the ground level. And these blades spin so fast that what happens is these tall stalks of grass get cut and they fall backward as we drive this mower forward. And you'll see all the grass lined up. And it's not good for drying because it's all uniform or pretty uniform the way the grass falls down. So you might have grass that's 2 feet tall, 3 feet tall. So we cut it and it lies down on the ground. Then we take, that's step number 1. And it takes, for us to do that, we have about a 9-foot hay mower. And it takes about 85 horsepower, maybe 100 horsepower to cut this grass. The next thing we do is after that, we use a tedder. And a tedder is like an egg beater. And it grabs the grass and it cuts it off and it throws it up in the air and it comes down in a random pattern. And there's air between all of these pieces of grass. And when that happens, the grass dries faster. So that's step number 2. Normally, that would take 2 days, maybe 3 days for the grass to dry. But now, the grass can dry in 1 day. Any comments on that, Rick?
Yeah, that's a nice tool. Side road delivery rakes, all kinds of different things that you can use. The air part is on drying is called vapor pressure. And what you're trying to do is get the faster exchange of moisture from the inner part of the plant to the surface of the plant to get out into the air itself. And that's what you're doing ultimately. You're increasing the drying process using air because the air does the exchange in what we call vapor pressure. There's other ways of doing it. It's called freeze drying, where you pull a vacuum on it. And if you pull a vacuum on it, where you're moving the air out of the machine faster than it's going into the machine, so that there's a concave inward process, and that is written up in drying chapter in my Potential of Herbs as a Cash Crop, a lesson, remedial, in terms of how to handle your products.
Hold that thought. We'll talk more about this when we come back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Rick, so what I'm saying is that we have never been able to bale hay in 1 day. So we cut it, then we ted it. The next step is we rake it.
And that's
so
because you're going to have rain tomorrow.
Yeah, and we have to do it. But what I'm saying is the sun's rays now.
What's happening is the weather's changing. And
that's where I'm going with this.
Do it like the old way.
Right. We used to be able to take our time. We'd have 3, 4, 5, 6 days in a row of no rain. Now, if the rain,
count on that. No.
Right, if the rain lands on the hay that's been cut,
basically the ant in a system of points where it starts with you first, and what is happening to the American farmer is a crime against humanity. And I'm telling you that flat up because I am the man that was one of the pallbearers of Chuck Walters. I love agriculture. That is my foundation, and I'm watching what is happening to people like you personally, and it's wrong. And they talk about subsidies. That is not the way to fix things. And
well, I don't get any subsidies.
And how much of it is the weather?
I don't get any
manipulation. But I can tell you this, there's a whole bunch of things going on right now with jets and deployment of chemtrails that I don't have an answer to. And if I don't understand it, what's going on?
Rick, there are subsidies, and here's how I think that works.
Yeah.
There are some blue blood families in every village or in every county in the United States, people whose names are prominent. And what I think happens is they get jobs like at the county level and at the agricultural county level and the mayoral level and those kinds of jobs. So they know what's happening. They control what's happening. So I think with farm subsidies, the federal government or the state will say, okay, we've got this program coming up, and we can't release that information until the 1st of next month, so keep it quiet. And I think what happens is the people who work for these government corporations, like the soil and water conservation people, I think what they do is they call their relatives, their brother-in-law and that kind of thing, and they say, look, there's this really neat program coming out where 3/4 of your well will be paid for, 3/4 of your fence will be paid for. And so I suggest that you show up here at 9 o'clock or 8:30 or 8 o'clock, whenever they open up, on this date. And that way you'll be first. And your application for government subsidy funding will be time-stamped first, and we'll process it first. And we process until we run out of money. So the same families get the same, government subsidies over and over and over. And the little guys, I'm talking about the less than 1,000-acre farmers, hate it, absolutely hate it. I hate it too. And I look at these farmers boy, isn't it great how they always seem to get all this new stuff. And they have all this great fencing, and we have all this old broken down equipment. But these other guys, they must be a lot smarter than we are, because they seem to be doing so well that they can afford all this new stuff. Fertilizer, fencing, liming. They've got new equipment. They hire people who do all this work that we do ourselves. It's wonderful that they know how to do all this stuff that we don't know how to do. But I believe I just gave you the answer. It's an inside information. And so these blue blood families, and I'm using blue blood in quotes because they're not, they seem to be getting ahead faster than everybody else. Just like the top 1% is, controls so much of the wealth. But what I'm seeing is it's getting very, very difficult. Our animals are afraid. And when I talk about our animals, I'm talking about domestic as well as our cattle. So our cats are afraid. Our cats want to sleep with us. We have to kick them out over and over and over all night long. We have to say, hey, knock it off, don't come on the bed. And they've got short memories. I mean, within 30 seconds, they're back. The dogs, everybody wants to be with us, whether we're walking through the farm, whether we're in the shop working on equipment, it doesn't matter what we're doing. If we're in the garden, everybody wants to be there. They do not want to be left alone. I think animals are terrified. And are you seeing that too, or is it just on the Finelli farm? Let's talk about that when we come back. Class, we'll take your call if you want to give us a call. Is it happening to you? 866-582-9933. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. So, Rick, I've been talking about these animals, these domestic animals that appear to be afraid, and they want to be with us no matter where we are. I opened the studio door a second ago to get another cup of coffee, and Fungus decided that he wanted to come in here. And this is a cat a kitten that's less than a year old, and he's a pretty smart kitten. He actually, the type of cat he is called a Maine Coon. That's the type, Maine as in the state, Coon, C-O-O-N. And they're known to be intelligent. And, of course, we all think our cat's intelligent, right? Well, he's pretty smart. He has learned how to push doors open. And he doesn't just kind of lean against them and push with his body. He literally gets up and reaches vertically as high as he can, and then he pushes. So he uses leverage to push open doors. And if the door doesn't move that way, then what he does is he reaches under the door with his paw, and he shakes the door. He rattles the door to see if he can get it to open. So he knows which way they all go, whether they open right or left. He knows how to open doors. He can't reach the doorknobs yet, and I think as soon as he can do that, he's going to learn how to turn the doorknob. But other than that, he can push the doors open. He can push them closed, and we hear doors opening, closing all over the house at all times of the day and night because this guy wants to get wherever he's not, he wants to get there. So I'm concerned that animals are trying to tell us something. I'm concerned that they are afraid. And it's not just our cats and dogs and chickens. I think it's whales. I think it's ocean life. I think it's way bigger than we might be paying attention to. Any comments?
Well, yeah, but which way to go with it? Animals, like I was going to say, are closer to spirit than we are. That means they're closer to their inner guide, like we need to think about doing, which we don't. That's why we do religion. That's why we do science, trying to find that center. And now, actually, it is an amalgam of an hourglass where you're Malcolm in the middle. And we have not yet come to that place of balance, or walking in balance. And that is Sun Bear. I remember him visiting me in the early 70s. He was a Chippewa medicine man, and he wrote a book called Walk in Balance, Finding Your Own Center. And that's something most of us don't even think about. And that's where the real truth lies. Finding the balance between this and that. And
you
animals
mentioned Chippewa.
are born with that's called spirit. It's not what you do, but how you do it. The balance.
You mentioned Chippewa. One of USA Preparedness instructors is a man. He's an American Indian. His name is Dr. Adam Fortunate Eagle. He's Chippewa, and he is the ringleader of the Alcatraz occupation, where Native Americans from all tribes ended up in just outside of San Francisco at Alcatraz and occupied it to prevent the government corporation from selling it to their friends, whoever their friends might have been, the alleged highest bidder. In 1956, Rick, the U.S. military released mosquitoes infected with yellow fever over Savannah, Georgia, and Avon Park, Florida. And following these tests, Army agents posing as public health officials went out to test the results of their infections. What do you think about a government corporation that does that? And that's not even the tip of the iceberg. That's just the
conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Right out of the gate. What do you think the immigrants coming into the United States is all about? Yellow fever, as a metaphor.
Let's see how it works.
Well, they're bringing in all kinds of creepy, what is a measles outbreak, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, we need more immunization because the illegal aliens are actually rampant with diseases that don't exist in the United States.
Yeah, kind of like the Japanese beetle. We didn't have Japanese beetles until the Japanese beetle came here and then was a plague.
How did it get here? Japan imported it on purpose.
Yeah.
Just like the Mediterranean flower moth. Mm-hmm. I had a truckload of cones that almost flew away. I loaded the truck with cones, and when they opened the door, there were more moths that came out of that truck. We thought it was literally going to fly away. Mm-hmm. Where did they come from? They were imported from Hungary in an attempt to stop the trade wars that were going on then. And right now, the war that's going on with China and embargoes, oh, good God, and Mexico. People aren't noticing that because we're being distracted by other things and the media isn't reporting it. And the person that's going to get hit first is you, the American farmer. That was what made our country great, having our own food production. And what did we do? We started to monocrop rather than diversify. There's a good word, storable and non-storable commodities as a metaphor.
Well, it's interesting you say that because what we have done here at our farm, actually, if someone were to ask us, what do? We'd say we grow grass. And then what we do is we take the grass and we bring it to the next level by running cattle on that grass. But there are so many types of grass that we grow because some grasses grow really well in warm weather. Some grow really well in cool weather. Some can take drought better than others. So we have them all. We have all these grasses planted in the same field. So depending on what happens, whether it be too hot, too cold, too rainy, too dry, we'll have some grass because we are not going to have one type of grass. Is that something that you've talked about in your books?
I absolutely suggest the balance because in terms of cow foods, if you use 3 different grasses in your thing, not only do they grow better, predicated on the variation, they're actually better for the cow itself in terms of amino acids. Now, that's where if the cow is getting a better food grade of balance in their diet with triticale and, I don't know, a fescue, and then maybe add a tall fescue, and then maybe, but what I am going to suggest is you grow a different kind of grass and you market it to the floral trade just between Grants Pass and the coastline, which is 60 miles. There are more than 60 different grasses that will dry and take a color wheel for the floral trade. And do you know how much you get for that?
Very, very interesting. And you know what's silly about that whole thing? Not that what you said is silly, but how people live. So it's more important. People will spend more for a grass to look at it as a decorative item than they will to raise cows.
That's right. You're getting the bigger picture. That's right.
It's crazy. Okay, so here's something that I've noticed, and I want to share this with you.
How many grasses are used at everybody's funeral? That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody dies, right? And how many different grasses are in your funeral?
You're absolutely right. And the ones that smell, have a nice pleasant scent to them.
Most all of that because the American farmer didn't wake up in time. 10 times more of those grasses are imported by the Dutch, who rule floral trades. Dutch auction house comes to mind. Now, I'm telling you flat out, these guys are doing it before you even were born.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those markets are yours if you wanted to do the local. And if we regionalized rather than work with Cargill, your auction house for beef, your American farmer will have a leg up right out of the gate by simply diversifying. Simple.
I wanted to share this with you. I have a theory, but I don't know for sure. So when we were baling hay, there's one field that has, we'll call it fescue, tall fescue. And we cut it and we baled it. And the bales, we've used the same baler for, 20 years. We've used the same tractors for 20 years. So the bales are the same size. That's a constant. The tractor that we move them around with, that's a constant. Some of these bales are so heavy that we can't pick them up. That is something that's hardly ever happened before. They're so heavy, and I'm thinking, and we're talking, a tractor can pick up a 1,000-pound bale with no problem. But a 1,200-pound bale, that's a problem. It can't pick it up. What happens is the rear end of the tractor will come off the ground. So we know that these bales are heavier. Well, it's really fun
for the farmer, man. I could just see it.
Yeah. Well, it's real fun to watch, unless you're watching it from the tractor seat.
Yeah,
then it's not so much
go,
fun.
Man. There it is.
Yeah. So, and when I say come off the ground, I'm talking like a foot or two. It's really unsettling. The point I'm trying to make is the baler is the same. The guy baling is the same because I'm that guy, and I bale them the same way. There's a gauge on the baler that says it's X percentage full, and I always take them right to the limit. So it's not like I make small bales and I make what some farmers do is when they sell their hay, they make the bales a little bit smaller, but they still charge by the each, and they it's like here's an 85% full bale. Well, mine are 100% all the time. Well, some of these bales, and actually it's a whole field of them, are so heavy we can't pick them up. And I'm thinking they're about 20% heavier than they were the year before on the same field. Nothing's changed except the weather. I believe, and I can't prove this yet, but I believe that the grass is more dense, kind of like the difference between a softwood and a hardwood. A hardwood is more dense. For a given size of a piece of oak, it'll weigh more than white pine. It's as simple as that. Rick, do you think something has happened to cause a change in the growing pattern of this particular field?
GMO.
Where it's more dense.
Genetically automated. They have changed the structure.
So do you think that what I'm seeing is really happening?
Oh, yeah. No question. No question. Absolutely.
We'll be right back with Doc Ram. So, Rick, the American farmer, the small American farmer, the one who's not on the take, the one with less than 1,000 acres, I believe that it is impossible for that family to survive in the current economic conditions and weather conditions and social conditions without all members of the family working. And if you remember years ago, farmers would have many children, and that's because they needed the entire family to keep working. And if one or two of the children decides, I'll just get behind a keyboard and and make appointments or flip hamburgers for other people, that kind of thing, the whole family farm will collapse. And that's really what it's like. And I think we're almost done. I believe that the small family farm will not be able to survive in the long run with all the things that are happening, like these weather conditions that have wiped out, most of the corn and soybean planting for this year, if we're going to have any, crops at all. Do you see the same kind of thing, that the plight of the small farmer?
The small family farm has changed and is no longer viable as it originally was. It is going to require a change in metaphor of what it really is and what it is not. And that has been what I've been writing about for 30 years. I used to talk about balancing trade deficit with export. And that, in the 30 years, has changed. It's no longer about gross national product. That will be the story that is used for agribusiness, but not the small farm. The small farm today has the local market. I have a model going on right now in Chattanooga where the 40% of the food consumed in that city is now grown locally. Whereas in your community, it's less than 12%.
Yeah, on a good day, it's 12.
Now that is the change of what's happening. It's no longer about trade and agribusiness. And that's because our markets are broken into two kinds of categories: storable and non-storable commodities. And when you want to eat a strawberry from Mars, that doesn't rot in January, imagine what's inside it for nutrient.
Yeah, and what about passing vegetables?
What happened
and
to
beef?
Canning? What happened to, putting up your cukes as chill peppers? It's going to require a change in attitude of what you're doing and why. And that's the part I write about.
Even the Amish, with their family farms, are having an extremely tough time making a go of it.
That's keeping the lost children. They have to leave the farm in order to live. That's what's happening now.
every farm I know of, including this one, has some kind of income from outside of the farm in order to keep it going. It cannot be done. And I look at the price of tractors, the price of implements, and our tractors, the tractors that we've used, Mrs. Finelli and I have used in order to, and our son, in order to bale. One of them is a 1984. 1984. That's an antique. Another one was a 1984.
You're the antique.
Yeah, actually. Yeah. And Mrs. Finelli. So here we have Mrs. Finelli's my age, 67, and she and I are out there with our middle 20-year-old son farming, and it's the three of us cutting, baling, tedding, raking hay. And how many people close to 70 years old are doing that? Fewer and fewer and fewer, right? So without us, the farm won't happen. Without our son, the farm won't happen. So we are a dying breed. I mean, literally. So how is this all going to work? How are people going to eat in the future when we have the absence of the pollinators, which are the bees? We have the weather conditions that are wiping out the crops or preventing us from planting the crops. The equipment that it's hard to get parts for now because our tractors and our implements are antiques and new ones are unaffordable. How is this going to continue? The answer is it's not going to. It's not going to. That's how I see it. I'm sorry to say it that way, but I don't know how it's going to continue. But yet, we're willing to pay $65 to go see a ball game, or $1,000 or $10,000 to go see the mouse. We're beyond stupid, and it's our own fault. It's the GDP. They're going to take us down. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, thanks so much for being with us. RichardAllenMiller.com.